Gallup has a new number that tells us how many LGBTQ plus Americans there are. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is our website. And if you go there, you'll learn about us, our partners, including Deep Discount, we'll be visiting with a little later in the show. And you'll learn about TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast. And if you already are liking and following, there we go. I think we're not allowed to say subscribe. You can't say subscribe anymore. Then you already probably are getting that in your feed, and we hope you're enjoying it. So here we are in March, my God. And, it's been such a strange winter because normally, I really hate January, not because, January is it's dead, cold as all get out, and it's long. And then you get into February, and now we're into March, and we really didn't have much of a winter, right?
Well, as soon as New Year's hits for me, because all the holidays are done, right?
Yes.
So it's like, wah, wah, wah. I still, even though as old as we are, there's something nice around the holiday season, particularly when it's a little chill in the air. There's snowflakes in New York, and the city's bustling, and the windows are decorated, or even rural areas, it's quite nice. So I always like December for that reason. But
I think we've added a new tradition for our holidays too. I'm not sure I would do it every year, but I think I told you that we went to finally see the Radio City Christmas Spectacular with the Rockettes.
You were telling Patrick and Howard about that.
And they knew about it, the whole bit. Patrick and
where
Howard
you been? Where have you been?
Yeah, that was the best part. They're like, well, you live there. Why haven't you seen it?
What did it cost to go, by the way? Do you remember?
It was, I went to TKTS and bought tickets day of. We literally ran to the theater to make it because I just thought no one was going to be in town. It was packed. $56 a ticket, maybe?
That's not too bad.
And someone said to me that if you hadn't gone to TKTS, the tickets would be a little over $100. And a fellow New Yorker said, it's not a $100 show. It's a $56.
Is that what New Yorkers call that? I always called that tickets. I just thought that was an abbreviation for tickets. TK.
It is. It is an abbreviation for tickets.
Why don't you just say
TKTS?
Is that what they say in New York?
Yeah,
TK.
TKTS.
TK. I was like tickets. Go to tickets.
Hey, I have a random one for you too.
What?
Bob found a show on HBO Max called The Great Pottery. Let me see here. It's called The Great Pottery Throwdown, and it's a competition show in the style of Project Runway or any of these things where people make things. Now, the cool thing about this show is it's pottery. Everybody gets along. The artistry is so cool and fun to watch.
One of the judges.
Lesbians? There have been a couple, yes.
When lesbians do pottery, wasn't that always the stereotype?
Yeah, well, and some of them are very good potters. There's one judge named Keith who wells up and actually cries often in happiness for some of the stuff he's seeing these people produce.
I made an ashtray.
Well, these things are super elaborate. The challenges they have to do are just out of this world. So while we're watching it, Bob and I had a flashback to when we had Marge Margarets on.
Yes.
So if you happen to be watching on YouTube, I put up a photo of Marge Margarets. She's a potter out in California. We've had her on the show in 2020 when things were shut down, and she was, had to find new ways to connect with her fan club and people who buy her work. What I put up on the screen is something we have on our dining room table upstate. It's called the poinsettia. It's multiple dishes nested in each other with this little sculptural thing in the middle. The stuff is light as air. And now that we watch The Great Pottery Throwdown, we have no idea how she makes this.
It's funny because you're exactly right. I have the same. I have a set as well as a bowl for Spike. She sent me a little water bowl for Spike.
That's right, yeah.
And you did tell me to watch that show, the Pottery Throwdown. I tried to get Richard and a few other people, but they haven't caught on yet. But I loved it, the few episodes I saw. But I had a whole new appreciation for what Marge did because I was the same way as you. I thought, man, there were so many of those projects, and these people were all potters, but there were so many projects that went wrong, right? I mean, there are a lot of situations where
the clay collapses or the wheel. Yeah.
And I thought, it really is an art and a skill and an artisan ability because it's interesting. It is a fun show.
It's two things, and when I look at Marge's work, it's the crafting of the object and it's the decoration. And that's the other thing that blows my mind when we watch the Great Pottery Throwdown is the colors they apply sometimes look really dull and flat. And then they put something else on top of it, and it goes through the kiln, and it comes out like bright and crazy. And the other challenge we watched the day is something called a Reiki. What was it, Reiku? Or it's a Japanese technique where they fire it in the kiln, and then they put it in a thing of ash, and they throw in combustibles like plants and metals and stuff like that. And apparently, it adheres to the porcelain in a certain way and creates all this crackle kind of look and everything. Anyway, we are fascinated by it. And hey, if you want to check out Marge's site, it's margemargulespottery.com, MARGEMARGULIES pottery.com. I think you'll be blown away by her work, and we should have her on again someday. But you're right. Every time we watch the show, we look at that piece she made and we're like, how'd she do that?
Yeah, no, it's certainly a skill.
So if you're new to the show, we have a little pattern here we follow. It's called the show run, actually. So we do what we're doing right now. Tim and I catch up. We have a segment called Caught Your Eye. We visit with Deep Discount, take a quick break, have a business birthday, the only show in the universe that does business birthdays, and Tim is in charge of that, and he goes far and wide. And I mean far and wide.
Far and wide, long and deep. Far and wide, long and deep.
It sounds like a porn movie. And at the end of the show, we're going to have Shop Talk, and that's a new poll came out from Gallup that seeks to put its arms around the number of LGBTQ Americans. A couple of surprises in there, some things that aren't so surprising to Tim and me, but we'll get there when we get there. So, Tim, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So I was poking around, John, and I laughed because I'll be
Whenever you
curious.
poke around, you laugh.
Well, I'll see. I'll be curious to see what you think of this because I don't have a problem with it, but I think some people would.
This is a weird setup. Okay.
So the headline is Bent and Dent, Amish and Mennonite food stores are popular in hard times. So this story comes from Central PA, but apparently these are popping up all over the place, and particularly in areas that have Mennonite or Amish populations. And so it's so this one, as I said, came out of Central PA. And what's happened is some Amish and Mennonite people have been running these scratch and dent stores when farming kind of went away in the 80s. And they run them they're not allowed electricity. Particularly the Amish are far more strict than the Mennonites.
Why do I have a thought that there's like 3 bulbs?
But they use batteries to run the register, for instance, or they just have pads of papers. But the beginning of this article says, standing torn and bent on a supermarket shelf, a 14.7-ounce box of Fruit Loops, 5 months past its best if used by date, goes for $2.49. In tack, it's around $5.
I was going to say, that's half the price.
Right. In the freezer sits a pint of Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream, 6 months past its best by due date, sporting a knuckle-size indentation on the side, also priced at $2.49, normally $6. Nearby, a banged-up 180-count plastic jar of Flintstones gummy vitamins. Looks like Fred lost a fight. It goes for $9.97, usually $20. It's not pretty, but it's cheap. It says, welcome to adventure shopping. And this was at a particular store called the Green Hills Farm Discount Grocer, a Mennonite-owned store in Lancaster County, PA. Now, they don't want to tell people where they are because they're afraid they're going to be inundated with people that don't care.
Okay.
And
I'm not sure the inundation flood is going to be with people like me, but
I was wondering.
Sometimes I put a can back if there's a dent or something.
Well, they were saying people from the cities they think might come. They sell everything they sell's got a ding or a scratch or ripped or bent, or it's way out of its best by date. And they said that at a time when the U.S. Department of Agriculture says food prices are 10% higher than 2022, these stores, mostly run by Mennonites and Amish, are seeing a lot of new shoppers coming in from the cities. So it says ripped boxes are sellable as long as the inner package is sealed. Anything broken or leaking or bulging will be thrown out. And they said that the sell-by date on these things really is not necessary. And this, so
we're just going to disregard this sell-by date.
Yeah, well, they said that's really just for whether it's potent or fresh or whatever in terms of. But they said all you really have to do is smell it, and if it smells or it's off-putting, then you just put it back, or you just throw it away. They said that this one guy, and I just had to laugh because this couldn't be any more stereotypical. He said this was apparently this is an expert on the Mennonites in the Amish people. He says they aren't squeamish about what they eat or whether it's out of date, said Eric Weisner, an author who's lived and written books about the Amish. He runs a website called Amish in America. It's a misconception that the Amish eat healthy. For them, dinged up is no big deal. So he says they show a picture of one of the Amish buggies next to a white BMW from Philly.
So wait. The stores are run by Mennonites.
Mennonites and Amish, yeah.
Well, the Mennonites can do things with electricity and objects, right?
Right, and the Amish can. Now, one time, Brian and I went out to a Mennonite farm. I don't know if we told you this was hilarious. We had to go get all this scaffolding, and we went to this barn. You could have eaten off the floor. You and I know when we went on the ice cream tour.
Oh, right? The one dairy we went to was insanely clean. Yeah.
So Brian and I show up, and the women were in traditional, they had the hats on and the clothing, the dresses, and there were pies on the ledge, the whole deal. And we had said we were there to pick up scaffolding, and she said, "Well, she said my husband's not here, but let me call the elder and see if I can do it." So she rings up on this phone, it was something like out of Mayberg, zink, 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 and she gets permission. And John, she opens up this door to this barn. She jumps in, drives the forklift, loading up Brian's truck. Meanwhile, we're looking. It looked like a German auto salon. Beautiful, beautiful BMWs, Audis, Mercedes. The kids had
They had all those cars
Volkswagens.
parked in there?
All there. All in gray, all gray, black, very plain. And I said, "What's this?" She goes, "Oh, we can drive those on Sunday." I said, "I'm going to be a Mennonite."
Wow.
So, which was hilarious. Anyway, so we had gone through there. But I just thought this was a funny story because they're talking about how much we throw away. They said the USDA says we throw away $150 billion worth of food a year. And they said that a lot of this food is fine, but people won't eat it if they see a dented can. They said they get a lot of stuff if a truck gets in an accident and something falls off a pallet. Something's just dented. Regular stores won't sell it. Rather than throw it away, they send it to these discount grocers. And the Mennonites and Amish have been really at the forefront in setting up these groceries. But they said they're starting now to open up all across the country different types of places to sell this scratch and dent stuff. The one thing I did find odd, though, they said that they're also selling medications.
You mean like over-the-counter stuff, like cough syrup, aspirin, the whole bit?
Yeah, they said that they're selling a medication for... They won't sell baby formula that's out of date, but anything else is fine. The government won't let them sell baby formula. But they will let them sell drugs, prescription drugs.
Prescription drugs.
And they said that prescription drugs, for the most part, have a 15-year lifespan. So they said it may say it expires in 6 months, but they say it might not be as potent. But they said that the last 15 years, so these people, particularly people that have to take medications that don't have insurance, are also looking at these places because they're getting prescriptions for pennies on the dollar by out of date, medication. So next time you come down, we'll have to head over.
Well, next time I come down, what's the closest to you?
There's actually one in Dover, Delaware that my neighbors, I found out, go to that have more money than every person we know combined added up times 50. I mean, these people got coin, and they didn't want to know they were going there. And I made some comment about, I heard about this story, and they're like, "Oh, we've been," and the other woman pulls me aside. She goes, "They shop there every week." I said, "You're kidding me."
But Tim, you remember there was a book that we both used to talk about called The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah.
And it was this exact behavior, right? Like going to the dent store, you know. Well, why not, right?
Yeah. So that's what was called. That's what called.
Excellent one. Now, mine could not be further away from the Dent and Scratch store. I think it will make you laugh. And it's basically China has banned women from modeling lingerie online, so men are doing it instead. That's what we wanted. We got the response. Yes. I mean, look at that picture of a guy in a black negligee.
Men in lingerie.
Lingerie, wearing his mask there. So China has a ban for some reason on women modeling lingerie. And this is called Livestream Shopping. Livestream shopping sites that ignore the ban are shut down, and offenders can be charged for disseminating obscene material. To bypass this rule, online lingerie businesses are hiring men to do the modeling instead. So this live stream shopping thing is more than a $700 billion a year industry, according to Statista. The industry is said to account for about 10% of the country's e-commerce revenue. And live streams that feature females modeling lingerie have had a history of being promptly shut down as a result of China's law against spreading obscene material online. So the Chinese view a woman modeling lingerie, which she is covered, right, as obscene. To work around it, some of these businesses have really recently started hiring male models to flaunt women's lingerie. One of the first broadcasts was held last December. Some Chinese netizens are amused by this attempt at dodging the loophole. The guy wears it better than the girl, a comment on a video clip of the live stream said recently. Others are saying that using mannequins would be a better alternative to accurately modeling the lingerie. A few comments on Weibo, that's the Chinese social media platform, also say that this trend is depriving women of job opportunities. If it's a female model, this live stream will be banned every other minute. It's not like this hasn't happened before. This is still depriving a group of women of their job opportunities. Male broadcasters modeling traditionally female products are, in fact, not new to the scene. One of the industry's most popular lipstick models, I can't even get through this, Austin Lee, is male and was even dubbed the lipstick king in China by fans. Personally, we don't have a choice. The designers can't be modeled by our female colleagues, so we will use our male colleagues to model it. People in China go to live stream shopping events because of great discounts. This is not the same trend we see in the United States. I mean, I guess the closest to live stream shopping would be QVC, maybe, or Home
QVC,
Shopping Network.
Home Shopping Network, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
So first I thought you were going with this story was that because there's such a shortage of women. Remember the one kid policy?
Yep.
And then what's happening? China has a real problem now with population, even though they got 1 billion more people than us. They're concerned about their military and a few things because they don't have this younger generation that particularly has gone soft. Well, this just goes to show. I can't imagine. I don't know. I shake my head because there's so many other things that they're critical of Western society for, right? But it's okay for boys to dress up like this and do this. But they'll be very critical of anything that has a tinge of gender affirming, life or anything like that. But this is okay.
You totally went to where I was going to go with this, which is out of one side of your mouth, you're saying, oh, that, the Western morals are of decay and gender fluidity and all this stuff. On the other side, it's like, you can't have women doing this. So have a guy do lingerie.
I mean, doing and wear lipstick. Right.
How could you not look at this and say, oh my God, how hypocritical. And there we go, right?
Have you ever been to China?
No.
I've not either. I have no desire to go.
But Marianne has.
Oh, well, she's, I think she was
She had stories.
She was there for a long time. Teaching English. Teaching English.
And trading blue jeans for something.
Yeah.
I remember one time she went and she packed up the suitcases, things you couldn't get in China, right? I think jeans was one of them. This goes back quite a way.
Ballpoint pens.
Ballpoint pens, yeah. All right. Two very good caught our eyes. We have the Mennonite Dent and Scratch store, and we have men modeling women's lingerie in China. It's on the focus group, folks. This is what you tune in for. All right. So as many of you know, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the focus group, and we would love you to start shopping at their site by going to ours, focusgroupradio.com, and click on Sharky the Shark, the Deep Discount logo. It is a site-wide spring sale. Everything's on sale. They normally have fantastic prices to begin with, so when you add in the sale, you're going to pick up some great stuff. So since it is a spring site-wide sale, and Tim and I love site-wide because we can go all over the place, Mr. Bennett, what did you select this week?
So as I was, I poked around here too, like I did for Caught My Eye, I found the All in the Family Complete Series box set. It's 27 discs. It was just released last year, actually less than a year ago. It was released last May in 2022, and it's only about $52 at Deep Discount, and with 35% discount on the retail price. And I thought, gosh, All in the Family is, I haven't seen it. I guess in some places where, depending upon where you live, they might show reruns. But for me, All in the Family did for 1970s TV what I Love Lucy did for 1950s TV. It was certainly
Agreed.
a point of culture. And, Archie was, as soon as he opened his mouth, complaining about everything they have written here is funny. Minorities, hippies, feminists, or anyone else who disagreed with him. But, and it was just such a well-written series. And one of those things you and I often opine about, in that everybody would watch. It was on a Sunday, right?
Yep.
It was usually Sunday night, and everybody
Water
watched
cooler
it.
TV, right? On
And you would talk
Monday, you'd
about
have
it.
something to say about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And whether it was his relationship with minorities, which he always struggled with. Even remember he had they called him a transvestite at the time. Taxi driver gave him a kiss.
Yeah, I
There
remember
were
that.
all those sort of things. They really pushed society to see people different ways and to explore people in terms of their differences, and used Archie as the vehicle for it. And so I just thought it would be a great thing for anybody who's a fan of TV or American culture to have in their collection. So I picked All in the Family, the complete series.
Both both points you finished with, American culture and classic TV. Well said. And for $52,
Yeah.
I just think this is the kind of thing where you buy this and you dedicate yourself to sitting down to watching some of this TV and some of the great acting. Come on. I mean, I've seen interviews with all the cast. His chair, Carol O'Connor's chair from All in the Family, is in the Smithsonian Institution. And just enjoy a lens to a different time. But the weird part is what you just talked about. Sometimes the 70s were more progressive than the 2020s, right?
Right. And, he uses language that you could not use today. He'd be,
No.
or anybody would be in trouble for using disparaging comments about gay people or about African Americans, words that are not vogue to be spoken now, which surprises me because you hear them. I've watched a couple of these old episodes, and you hear him use the N-word in particular.
Yes.
And then you hear Jefferson mimics it right back to him. And they have this fight over it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's cringeworthy hearing it. But at that time, when that was on TV, it certainly was not acceptable, but also that was the way people had talked to one another. And so, for the time, I don't think anybody thought too much about it, did they?
Yeah, totally. And if you looked at the Rat Pack, Sammy Davis, Frank,
Yeah.
the Vegas shows, there was this thing of who could say what. I agree. It's funny that you picked All in the Family, because I went down the rabbit hole here on the site-wide sale, and I hit this and I just stopped. So there is a studio called Shout Factory, and I tend to love what they release because they pick and choose some cool stuff. So I selected the $6 Million Man, the complete series. Bum 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 bum. Brrr, we can rebuild him. Bum. I used to tune into this thing every week, and I still have memories of when the $6 Million Man met Sasquatch / Bigfoot.
Oh my God.
Who it was revealed is apparently from an alien civilization or something. We used to love the $6 Million Man. And again, this is a type of TV. I'm sure if I watch it now, it might not move quite as quickly, but every week, this was like tune-in TV for my friend Ricky, myself, my sister. Loved it to death. So
Ricky's the guy who introduced you to Star Trek, wasn't he?
No. Star Trek, I was introduced by my friend Philip Blaine.
Oh,
and,
okay. I thought it was the guy Ricky in their neighborhood.
Philip had two older brothers, and one day Philip and I were flying those wooden planes with the rubber band propeller on the front. He had a big hill in back of his house. We're having a ball, and one of the brothers comes out and goes, "You two, get in here now." They were older brothers, so you listen to the brothers, right? We go in. They had a rec room. They had a bar with one of those lights at the end with like the guy leaning against the light and all the liquor bottles in the back. And so they had this TV, and we sit down and we start watching. And the episode was called The Ultimate Computer. Actually, I told this story a while ago, and one of our listeners, Billy, sent me a hilarious email that referenced this, but I fell in love with it that day. But $6 Million Man is what I chose. The collection is $120.41. I think if you were ever a fan of this, it's well worth it because it's just going to bring back all the memories. Tim, it was like when you said last week when you smelled the paste we had as kids. It would take you back to kindergarten.
Thank you,
And
Mark.
of course, we do have a new release this week. This is a movie I've been dying to see because I know bits and pieces about it. And it's called Women Talking. And it's Bolivia 2010. So we know it's like 13 years ago. Within an isolated Mennonite community, Mr. Bennett, this is far from the Dent and Scratch store, it was stunningly discovered that certain of the men had, for years, been drugging and raping the women in their sleep. With the perpetrators hauled to the authorities by the elders, 8 women held in a barn for riveting debate over fighting, fleeing, or doing nothing at all. Sarah Poli's sobering ensemble take on the Miriam Tao's novel stars Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, who you might remember from The Crown, Frances McDormand, who we all know, Judith Ivey, and Sheila McCarthy. So this is one that I think is a must-see, and I'm sure it's going to be I'm just going to say it's a must-see, for me at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny. These shows, when we put them together, and, I didn't pay attention to the Mennonite community
connection.
How everything just kind of goes together.
We got a lot going on this show. We went back to visit with Marge and pottery. We have the Dent and Scratch, all this stuff.
All this stuff. So as John said, there's a spring site-wide sale going on at deep discount. You can get there by going to focusgroupradio.com. Click on the deep discount logo. We like that because we get credit for all your shopping there. This week I picked All in the Family, the complete series. John had picked The $6 Million Man, also the complete series. And the new release this week is Women Talking on Blu-ray. And as John says, a must-see. So we want to thank our friends at Deep Discount and be sure to head over there and shop away. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got our business birthday and we've got some shop talk. So stay with us.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. Focusgroupradio.com is our website, and everything you need to know about us is there, including information about our Tuesday podcast, TFGM Button, our partners, which you just met in the last segment, Deep Discount, and of course information about the two of us, Tim and me. I like the way you're smiling because, you and I try to avoid those.
Yeah.
By the way, hey, I had something for you on that one. I did speak to my mom about this, who was a teacher, and she just started laughing. She said, oh, you kids in grammar.
I think it's a Connecticut thing. When I go back and listen to the local commercials in Connecticut, I just think the way people talk there. Who says who? Says I. There's a commercial of the car dealer, Ernie Bach. Says who? Says I.
Says I.
Yeah, it's supposed to be says me, right?
Yeah, well, I also got corrected by a friend of Bob's mother's out at her senior apartment complex, a woman who taught English to Bob's older sister, and she heard me do it, and then she said, "Okay, I'll help you fix this problem," and she walked me through it. And it just brought back all the memories of all the rules you and I used to hear in English class. And you look outside, you're like, when's the recess? When we can go out and play?
Two things from high school that failed us, I think. Grammar English, because I think we had this experimental sort of thing, I think, going on in Connecticut. But the other thing, when I went off to college, I took geology. Did you ever take a geology class?
Nope.
We never had any of it in high school, never had any of it in grammar school, anything.
No.
They used to call it rocks for jocks. It's so easy. So my first day of geology class, I sit there and they handed out these like shoe boxes full of rocks. And he starts yelling, take out the stalactite, the this, the that, quartz, blah, blah. And I'm looking at this box of dirty rocks. I had no idea what anything was. And all these kids from Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and West, picking out the rocks. And I thought, I cannot, there's no way. I am so far behind already on the first day. Don't even know what a piece of quartz is. So I went and took a biology class instead for my...
You didn't get quartz at least?
John, it was, and they were dirty. Like you had to scratch it and see what it was. And these kids, all as if they'd done this their whole lives. collecting rocks, and they knew what these rocks were. And I thought, how did I miss this?
Totally. And, my mom used to, when my nieces used to come stay with my mom for a while, she used to do stuff with rock stuff. And I remember one day my youngest niece was sitting at the kitchen table. She's like, "Hey, Uncle John." She goes, "Check this out." And my mother goes, "Can you name that?" And she starts naming every rock. And she goes, "Can you name this one, Uncle Johnny?" I'm like, "It's called a rock."
It's called a rock.
There's a moon in the sky, and it's called the moon, right?
Went to the moon, got some dirt, found out dirt was dirt. Right?
Dirt was dirt. That's
it
what the
back.
little rover found out on Mars, too. There's dirt all over the place.
So, brought it back. What was it? Dirt.
Good to know.
Did you hear the moon's going to get its own time zone?
Yes. And they're very up in arms. There are a lot of people like, we need the time zones on the moon because of...
I guess we're all moving.
Sign me up for a condo. On that note, it's time for business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
Born today, March 8th in 1839, Josephine Cochrane. Now, her name was Cochrane, and she married a guy whose last name was Cochrane. She decided it wasn't Europeanized enough, so she put the E in the end. So it's Cochrane, right?
So it was Josephine Garris Cochrane. I would have just said Cochrane, but you say Cochrane?
Yeah, she put an E in the name to change the pronunciation, it said here in her bio. To make it
okay.
more Europeanized. Her husband was a very successful grocer, and they used to host dinner parties. And they would host all these big, big parties, which is how she became the inventor of the washing machine. That her husband was very, very... So that she was from... I probably should do it correctly instead of remembering everything. They were in Chicago, and her husband had a very successful grocer business. And they lived in a mansion, and they used to host all these dinner parties. And she always thought it was horrible at the end to have to wash these dishes. And she'd get frustrated. And she'd find things that were chipped and dent from hand washing. So she decided to invent this machine. As a woman, she couldn't find anybody to help her. So she found this mechanic named George Butters. And both of them together developed what was the very first patent for an inventor of the successful hand-powered dishwasher. And she got the patent in 1886. She showed the new machine off at the Columbian Exhibition in Chicago in 1893. And at that time, they were very big and heavy, and houses really didn't have the capacity for hot water to run through these things. So they mostly were sold to hotels and other commercial customers.
It looks like an oil-burning furnace or something,
And the name of her company was Cochrane's Crescent Washing Machine Company. It became part of KitchenAid.
Wow.
And through an acquisition by Hobart Manufacturing after she died in 1913, and it grew into a commercial business. She, in her early life, she was raised in Indiana, and her father was an engineer, and she came from a family that said of innovators and people that were always trying to find other ways to make life easier, whatever that means. Her father went out to the gold rush, came back with nothing. And so then the family moved to Chicago, and this is where she meets her husband, the grocer. They had dinner parties and would prompt her to find this alternative to washing dishes. They said there had been other attempts to produce commercially viable dishwashers by men in 1850 and 1860, but hers was the one that became the success and the one that the government granted the patent to. But they said she faced numerous obstacles in her journey. And she imagine late 1800s, she was a female trying to do this on her own. Her husband had died. And when he died, the family was only left $1,500 because
$1,500 in
1883.
So what do you think that, I have no idea how to do the math on that, but it's probably only about $10,000
Yeah,
today's
I was going
money.
to say I was going to say a factor by 10 maybe. So you're probably right. So she had to figure out a way to make money, and she always had this idea about this dishwasher. So she went and tried all kinds of ways to make this item and to try to get the parts and try to get it done. So this guy George Butters helped her out, and she was able to do it and very successful. As I said, she died of I love this. She died of either a stroke or exhaustion.
They're very different.
That's
So
what I thought.
why is there like a question mark
In
there?
Chicago in 1913, she was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2006. She, the company now that she started, as I said, went to KitchenAid. It's now part of Whirlpool. So she, can you imagine how well she did in her invention? They asked her right before she died. She had an interview, and they said, had she known today what it took for her to invent this machine and try to go through all the hardships of getting it done, would she have done it again? And she said she didn't think she would.
That's an interesting answer for someone who invented something as, that changed our daily lives, right?
Yeah, they said she opened up her factory, and then somebody said to her, closer to her death, she recounted the hardships she faced through her journey and admits that if she knew then all she knew now, she would have never ventured to innovate the dishwasher due to all the hassles she received being a female. However, she's glad that she did.
And there we go, folks. Artificial barriers erected. Why? Because she's a woman.
She couldn't possibly be smart enough. Couldn't possibly be, it was all the things she would.
Oh, yeah.
Her trying to, she's a widow, and she has this idea, and she
Tim,
found.
when did women get the vote? What year was that?
1910.
It was after her death, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she couldn't even vote.
Yeah, so it shades the answer she gave when the question was posed, would you do it all over again? My expectation was you were going to say she would do it in a heartbeat, but her answer was studied and interesting based on her experience.
Yeah, I didn't go through all of the ups and downs, but I mean, there's, pages and pages of what she went through to try to have people believe in her and get her to get this accepted. And even though it worked, I mean, people loved it. These hotels loved it. It was just a lot of houses then were not set up for the hot water and for
Correct. Yeah.
the electricity it would need to run one of these. And there's pictures going forward. She constantly was working on it. And the one you see that looks like the oiler or the
It's like a furnace.
the oil burner. She had other ones that almost looked like laundry baskets upside down with the dishes around them with the water coming down.
Cascading
from
down.
The early 1900s. Yeah. So.
Think about her contemporary would be like a Joy Mangano, who invents a better mop and a bucket and becomes like a millionaire. And if you asked her, she'd probably do it again in a second flat because she didn't have that kind of those barriers to overcome, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's interesting. I like the honesty of it, because,
Agreed.
like you said, of course I would have done it again. I'm not so sure.
Based on what she experienced, yeah. I mean, it's enough to make you go back and decide. I mean, it's crazy. Excellent business birthday. You've had a good run of these. Tim, we have never, in our years of doing this, and if you're new to the show, we've been around for 15 years now. Are we allowed to say, or are we officially 14? What?
15.
15.
We started
out on
2008.
Sirius Satellite Radio, and our birthdays used to be timed to Saturdays when we did our live broadcast. And now Tim is really finding the Wednesdays, but I think you should be allowed to go plus and minus those days.
I do. And if there's somebody we've done before, there's a few people we had done over and over again. Not that everyone's listened. Nobody's listened for 15 years other than maybe poor Bob. But
I don't believe that. I think a lot of people have been around for a long time. Except poor Bob. Yeah, true.
But we try to, you gave the idea when you used to do your science birthday. You gave the idea of inventors, so we've kind of added inventors to
as business people
to our career. And you've always said that's a career.
And you grudgingly added entertainers too.
Sometimes, yeah, we had a couple porn stars.
Yeah, well, it's a business.
Entertain, yeah.
So at the beginning of the show, I teased an article that Tim had come across, which is interesting, and it's the headline reads: "New study identifies LGBTQ population in America." And we wanted to talk about this because this is something that in our professional careers we have dealt with and really dealt with since the day we started them. And now I used to own agencies that dealt with reaching the LGBTQ consumer. Tim was director of marketing and advertising programs at Subaru, and we both did that famous 15-year Subaru campaign. But one of the things that we always had difficulty with was putting our arms around an actual number. And this study was intriguing because I saw, we'll compare notes, Tim, but I found nothing surprising about the numbers. To put it in, if I gave you like the top line summary, more people are identifying in 2022 and probably 2023 as LGBTQ than they did in previous decades. Tim and I actually used to talk about this all the time with clients. We had a theory that the Kinsey studies of the late 50s and 60s used to say that 1 in 10 Americans was probably LGBTQ. Right. And we would use that math and we would come up with numbers that we thought were pretty accurate. We would skew it sometimes in favor of higher densities of population in urban areas. Makes sense. But we would also say to clients that the numbers that we were working with were never 100% accurate because people were afraid to self-identify. And I think that's the core of this article.
Yes, I would agree. I pulled out there were two numbers that kind of made me scratch my head. So one of them said 86% of the households, or 86% of the people they talked to said they were straight or heterosexual. 7% chose not to answer. So my question was, of that 7% that didn't answer, how many of those were closeted?
Why wouldn't you? So, yeah.
Right? Because if you said I prefer not to answer, so does that mean that if I said half of that number, because they're saying 7%, yeah. Right? They're saying 7% of the population identified as LGBTQ plus. They did 10,000 phone calls on this telephone survey, and when they asked people, how they identified, 7% they figured were LGBTQ, with half of them saying they were bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the second number that I questioned, which I don't know if you picked up on this one, was that they said Gen Z was the most LGBTQ, largest LGBTQ population, I guess, by cohort.
Yep.
And they said that close to 20% of them identified as LGBTQ, but only 13% said that they were bisexual. So I thought, well, wait a minute. They're larger than twice the population of LGBTQ people overall. That population said 50% was bisexual. This, Gen Z being the most open about it, only 13%. To me, that's a huge disparity.
In terms of the bisexual number?
Right, because when they said overall, they said half the people who responded of the adults said that they were LGBTQ. They said half of that number, the 7%, said that they were bisexual. In this case, it was a much smaller number. But Gen Z.
So you picked up. I highlighted both. I highlighted both passages, the exact two that you did. I honed in on that first one, and I went a little further up when they were talking about how the study was conducted. 10,000 phone calls nationwide. Now, if you're me or Tim, and if you've been in this business for a while, you pause when somebody says, we conducted a survey of 10,000 phone calls nationwide. Why did we pause? Who has landline?
Who's answering the phone? Right.
And when I get a call on my cell phone that I don't recognize, I just don't answer it.
Right, because you're pretty sure it's Rachel and Card Services. Right.
What kind of panties? Anyway.
What color pants you wearing, Rachel?
Yeah. So right there, that was one pause for me. So then I have to say to myself, of the population they were actually able to reach, are they getting bona fide answers? And if they are, that number you went to, the 7% who didn't want to answer,
right?
Something tells me that that's probably a chunk of people who are LGBTQ plus.
Right.
And that goes to that whole thing we talked about the fear of answering questions, letting your guard down a little bit. Yeah. I'm not surprised by Gen Z. A lot of our clients that we work with have been seeing these demographic shifts with Gen Z for a long time. In fact, that generation, quite the opposite of the older generation who's afraid to answer the question, they have no problem answering the question. And in fact, depending on the time of day and what day of the week it is, and I don't mean to be flip about it, but there's a lot of fluidity with the youth, with Gen Z. They sometimes will identify as cisgendered. Maybe and as they evolve and they grow and they meet more people, they sometimes change their label or their their where they fit into this.
Right.
So I was not surprised by that. If you had to sum this up, though, and if you and I were in front of a client right now, would you actually say that, Tim, you and I used to say that, what was it, 6% was the number, 6.5?
We used to use 6% to be safe. But you could, I think 7% is okay. I think
I'd go as high as 8.5. I'd go even higher. I think that this data tells me we're still not capturing a lot of people. Of course, others will use this data and they'll say that, oh my God, here we go. Gen Z is being turned queer. No, or, because now we're seeing numbers that we didn't see in the last 2 decades. It's not that there are more LGBTQ people. It's just that there are more people comfortable identifying in the cohort, right?
Right, exactly right. Or they may know somebody. They know an uncle or an aunt or a brother or a mother, father, whatever that has come out. So they're more familiar with people, and that was always the important thing to tell people, that when you know somebody and you're familiar with someone, you're more likely to be accepting of it. And so, in this case, I think Gen Z, particularly with media consumption and all the other things, how in many cases, particularly drag, has gone mainstream, right? So when you look at areas like that, I think people are far more open about who they are. I just found to me the discrepancy for me in this whole thing was Gen Z was.
It was 2 things at once, right?
It was 2 things at once. But what doesn't square up to me is that half of the population says they're bisexual, but only 13% says they're bisexual in Gen Z. To me, that should be about the same or even more.
Agreed.
So I would have to dig into that. But the other thing that you and I always know about data and research, it's directional. And in this case, it's directional.
You taught me that, yeah.
Right. It's directional, and that there's
it's a snapshot.
Right.
Yeah.
And that the population's growing, and those organizations or those corporations that ignore it, it will be at their peril eventually, because they'll be way behind.
Hey, for someone who didn't know rocks in a box, you turned out just fine.
I'll tell you what, I should take a geology class now. Maybe I'll do pottery.
Yeah. I talked to Bob about that pottery thing, and I said, I really feel compelled to he goes, yeah. And now Bob's grandmother was a potter, and he had in his basement her pottery wheel and all her stuff, and he described it this way. He said to me, he'd get back from high school and he'd be like, you know what? I think I'm going to make a pot or a cup. And he'd go downstairs and just make it. But he said if he was more directed than that, it wouldn't be something he was going to be doing. Really? And I thought about it for a long time, and I thought, okay, let's say I take a pottery class. And I did the research. I found a couple studios here in the city. You rent space at a wheel. You can buy the clay. And they recommend kind of dirty clothes to bring because you get messy. And he said, okay, you do it. You go there. What are you going to do? You're going to make plates and a bowl? And so,
nice.
And I thought something like that, yeah. And of course, then my mind went back to my ceramics class and memorial school with Brian Worgan purposely putting air bubbles in his ashtray to blow up the whole kiln. That's another matter entirely. Anyway, back to this the population thing. I am the other data point that I took away from this story about Gallup trying to put their head around the LGBTQ plus population size in the U.S. This is the Republican Party's worst nightmare coming down the road, right?
Yep.
And I have heard it from people in that generation, from young folks who literally will say, "We are waiting for this whole bunch to get out of the way," and they mean drop off the face of the earth.
Yeah. No, it's and what's going on in Tennessee with the banning of drag shows or whatever. You're not allowed to have it in public where kids could see it or whatever. So I guess there's no. A friend of mine said,
what happened to Halloween?
Right. What's going to happen with Halloween? Or what happens to all these other areas of entertainment that people have done in terms of.
There's nothing more important to tackle in Tennessee than drag shows. I mean, it's the opioid crisis. It's medicine that costs too much. It's a healthcare system that's not helping everybody. It's broken roads. Oh, but wait. These drag queens are a real problem. We better shut that down. I mean, even me saying it sounds absurd, right?
Every time they said that, I would show the picture of Rudy Giuliani in drag.
Oh, also, that's popped up a lot, by the way.
The governor in Texas was in drag. They have a picture of him in drag in high school. So, it's crazy. Crazy. But did you see 45? Is that who he was, 45?
CPAC?
Yeah, when he said he would stop the Ukraine war in about an hour.
In a day.
45 minutes.
You know what I think? I think the White House should invite him to stop the war in a day.
Give him a call. Yeah. Call Pooty.
And of course, the other thing that I wish the media wouldn't be, I wish we wouldn't be hearing so much about this, but Did you see the attendance at CPAC when they showed him speaking? Half the room was empty. At least, well, maybe a third. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say a third was empty. But who are you talking to? Who are these people? And then they talked to merchandise vendors there about what are the big items that are selling. And there's a dedicated bunch of people that buy Trump gear, right?
There was a guy set up. It was on TikTok. He said, "Trump lost. Everything must go." He had a table. He had all the 2020 merchandise, and people were mad and yelling at him. "What do you mean everything must go? You mean Trump lost? Trump lost. Everything must go." He had everything slashed. He had all this old Trump merchandise. I thought that was hilarious.
Did you see today's reporting about Fox? Some more stuff came out from the deposition of the Dominion voting case.
No.
And Rupert Murdoch is on record as saying they agreed to let Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy, continue advertising on the network because they wanted the greenbacks.
Of course they did.
They didn't give a crap about the fact that he was lying and causing and people who wanted to believe the lie, etc. But we need the green.
Need the
there
green.
You go.
There you go. That's all you need to know.
And he's not even American. And Tim, he's not even an American.
He's not. No. So
Well,
listen. That's all we could squeeze into the focus group this week. So thanks for joining us, and be sure to follow along at focusgroupradio.com. All of our media's housed there, including our podcast TFG on Button, which is released on Tuesdays, and then of course this show, the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash, every Wednesday. You'll find us on our Facebook feed or YouTube stream, plus multiple other platforms when you go to our website. While you're there at focusgroupradio.com, click on the Deep Discount logo. They're a partner of ours here, and they've got a spring site-wide sale going on right now. I had picked All in the Family, the complete series. John had picked the $6 Million Man, the complete series. And the new release this week is Women Talking, which is a must-see new release. So we hope you all have a great week. And remember, don't text and drive, arrive alive. And we'll see you, I guess, in almost the middle of March already.
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I know. Take care, everybody.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.